redemption is available to everyone, but sometimes the redemption that we need will happen when we allow someone else to receive redemption for what they did, even to us.
To the top. Just put the stack on the clock. I am Ray Allen's a shot. I'm going straight to the top.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Mike here with the Sports and the Real podcast, coming at you with another episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your family and friends. Also, don't forget the website, sportsandthereal.tv, sportsandthereal.tv. My episodes are there. You'll also find resources there. Some of the guests I interview, experts who can assist. If you want to have different conversations, you can find them there on the website as well, sportsandthereal.tv. Today, I'm excited to have another great conversation. Our conversations we call it offline. That's the terminology I'm used to, have been great so far. I think you guys will enjoy this. So sit back and listen in and listen intently, because we're going to cover some really important material here. So I'm glad to have on the show with me today Mark Delaney. He runs a practice called Purpose Therapy, a mastermind for men. He has a couple books. One book that's out called One Step to Freedom. Working on another book called In the Game. We'll get into those in a bit. Fun fact about Mark is that his uncle was a GM of the Cavaliers back in the day, which is one of the many sports connections that Mark has. So, Mark, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to this.
Absolutely. I can't wait for this conversation, man. So first things up, I know you wanted to talk about Pete Rose and Pete Rose passing recently for my younger audience, listeners. But those of us who have been around for a while, we knew about Pete Rose essentially getting kicked out of baseball, getting banned, and baseball wanted nothing to do with him. But nowadays, right, with Pete Rose passing and people wondering, well, should he now be allowed to be in the Hall of Fame since it was a lifetime sentence? But nowadays people are wondering, well, should he be allowed in the Hall of Fame? And I'm like, he should have been in the Hall of Fame way before this. Yeah. And the reason is, or one of the major reasons is because, as we see now, gambling is all over the place. And sports is so hypocritical in all this. Baseball, basketball, football, like every time you're watching a game, there's like a million commercials about sports betting. Everybody's doing it, but the players can't do it. The players get kicked out. NBA players have gotten kicked out of the league for wagering. NFL players have gotten suspended. It's all hypocritical because you have it right in their faces. Everyone else is making money off of gambling off of them, but they can't do it. In 2023, gambling, Americans wagered $119 billion in wagering. $10.9 billion in revenue were made by sports books. Clearly, the leagues get a share of the money. They don't care. The players can't bet. And Pete Rose essentially went to the grave doing something that, although they claimed he was doing it as a manager and so on and so forth, doing something that everybody is making money off of now, and it's so dang hypocritical of the leagues to sit there and act like, oh, we'll do as we say but not as we do, and it's terrible to watch. And people are wondering now, well, should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame? I know you have some strong takes about that one.
Well, they're trying to protect the game, and obviously tonight the New York Yankees and Cleveland Guardians are playing, and if one of those players has wagered on the game, especially if they've wagered to lose, their own team to lose, not the starting pitcher, obviously, the game is majorly rigged at that point. So to protect, to say we're protecting the league or protecting the game, I get that. But in the case like Pete Rose is someone that it's said that he only wagered for his team to win. And people say, well, then that means if he wasn't wagering, that means he was kind of assuming they were going to lose. You can make that point. The reality is it was wrong for him to gamble on his own games. But it's also true that every human being has has a history of some kind of failure. Every human being. And it's so interesting that there's a human being that's on a massive stage, like millions of people know of Pete Rose and his story. Millions of people cheered him on for years, and then everyone knows things he did wrong. And then Pete Rose fessed up to what he did, and still we're saying, you crossed a line.
Yeah.
There is no redemption for you. And what really terrifies me about that we didn't choose to give the guy a break and bring him back into the game. It terrifies me because most human beings, I think, live with a fear on the inside of us that if people find out about my problems, they'll disqualify me. Most people live with that inner fear that if I get found out for whatever my problem is, whatever my past is, if someone finds out, I'll be disqualified.
Absolutely. That's why a lot of people stay out of the public eye. Like a lot of people don't do certain things that will put them under the microscope, because they fear like people will research and look into their past and something may come
Yep,
out, or someone may come out with a story about them from back in the day that will cause them to essentially be
yep,
canceled. So I agree 100%. People live in that fear, and a lot of times there's not an opportunity for
yeah,
redemption, right? So we want redemption for ourselves, but a lot of times when other people mess up, especially if we don't like them, we're not looking to offer them any kind of opportunity at
if
redemption.
it's a Michigan fan, no grace for you. I'm an Ohio State guy. If you're a Michigan fan and you cross the line for me. Well, what's crazy, like what people need redemption in their life? Everyone.
Everybody.
I was at the prison last week. I visit once a week the prisoners, and we were talking about how every single human being needs the redemption story for their life. Everyone. Nobody has a story of, it's just all gone well for me, and I've never
Perfect.
crossed the lines. I've just always been a good person. I've never hurt anybody, and nothing's ever gone wrong, and it's just gone well. Redemption is for you, not me. That's garbage. Every human being. I'll tell you a story. I used to be a pastor years ago, and in the back row was this guy who was an alcoholic. And I grew up in a home. Alcohol was never in our house. I personally hate the taste of alcohol. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm a guy that if I like something, I usually indulge. But alcohol, I
Same
just
here.
don't like the taste of it. So I can't sit here and say I'm a really righteous person. I don't drink. It's like I hate the taste, so I don't. But this guy, he was an alcoholic, and I knew that. I never knew what to say to that man. I'm like, what does this mean? I just knew it was really bad, and everyone talked about it, and what I didn't know then that I now know now is that I was the same as him. I just had a different substance. I was a
Yep.
man that was ballooning up with weight because of what I did with biscuits and potatoes and ice cream. Like, I was him. His frustrations about life turned him to alcohol. My frustrations about life turned me to food. We were the same person, but we just look at it
So
differently.
you're right. So this might make some people uncomfortable. Do you feel like religion? I grew up Christian, right, in a Christian household. A lot of times we do that, right? We judge people whose sins, right, whose vices are different than ours. Um, and we don't. It's hard for us to look in the mirror to look at our small, so-called sin. Meanwhile, the person who's drunk, who's an alcoholic, who's whatever they are, right? We're ready to cast them
Yeah.
aside, and oftentimes, we don't offer them, any grace, any opportunity to get back in line. If they do, great, right? But it's not us extending the opportunity at redemption. It's more so somehow that person was able to find redemption, and we're like, oh yeah, good for you. You were able to make it back.
Yeah, make it back. I without a doubt, because I've been in church my whole life, and um, without a doubt, we put things in categories. I heard recently a lady reached out to my wife and she said, I don't know what to do. She said, for Thanksgiving, she said, my two adult kids are refusing to come to Thanksgiving if Aunt so and so is there. Well, Aunt so and so has two daughters that are living as lesbians. And
Mm.
because this aunt hasn't ostracized them and she still loves them, they refuse to hang out
They can't
with
be.
her. And it makes me like, I just, uh, I just think about how many times in my life I've gone to Thanksgiving meals and been a glutton. And by the way, there's a verse in the Bible about gluttony as being a really
Gluttony.
bad thing. But like, you act that way, that's horrible. Give me some more pie. And give me some more pie. But that behavior, hey, you're cussing over there. You have some more pie. And we put things in categories, and it prevents people from being able to find freedom for their life. Because if I put you in a category because of what your problem is, then I cause you to think wrongly about your problem as well. And instead of finding freedom, I make you think about my judgment of you. So there's a lot of, listen, when I was in ninth grade, I was a student that didn't pay a lot of attention in class. English class, I didn't pay much attention. But there's only one thing I recall from ninth grade English. It was a book called The Scarlet Letter that we were supposed to be reading. I wasn't reading it, but I heard the discussion in class. And what I recall from that book was there was a certain type of sin or wrong that a person could do, and they would be given this brand of a scarlet letter. And that story connected with the fear that was already on the inside of me. Because like I said earlier, I think most people are terrified of being found out for whatever their problem is. It doesn't matter what it is. I think everyone's terrified that someone that knows them is going to find out, and then they're going to be disqualified by those people.
Yeah, somebody's gonna come out and say, "Hey, I remember when
Yep.
did such and such," and that scares a lot of people. I'm even thinking about me starting this podcast. Right? I don't think I've done too many things that are like crazy, but somebody could say, "Well, you're not worthy of being on a podcast because back in the day you were X Y Z," and a lot of people fear that somebody might come in and disqualify what they've done. So let me ask you this, right? So to play devil's advocate, the other side, someone's going to ask then, what is the limit on redemption, right? Um, I've been, if I've somebody's gonna say, well, I've been, molested by, so and so, somebody in the church, by my dad, how how do you tell me then to, you know, not put this guy in this bad category, right? Not put this woman in this bad category. How do I look at, wanting redemption for this person when they hurt me personally? We talked before, when we first chatted, we talked about somebody like Deshaun Watson, a quarterback, right, for the Cleveland Browns, who a lot of allegations, right, have come up against Deshaun Watson. You know, on one side you'll say he deserves a shot at redemption of making things right. On the other side, there's 20 some odd people who are going to say, man, I don't know about that. This guy hurt us, and it could have been just one person, right, that he hurt. But what is the limit to redemption in your mind?
Well, I think that, first of all, consequences are necessary. There needs to be natural consequences to our actions. Our 2-year-old grandson was at our house yesterday, and he was pitching a fit. I think he was throwing a toy he knows he's not supposed to throw. Well, we believe completely in redemption for our 2-year-old grandson, but my wife still took that toy from him and didn't let him play with it for a while. There needs to be consequences. So to believe in someone's redemption doesn't mean that we take away any consequences. Consequences, the goal of consequences is that the human being who did something wrong will acknowledge they did something wrong and have remorse. And with remorse can come the response of redemption from other people. But redemption doesn't have to mean like if there was a certain uncle who did something to a niece or nephew, he can experience redemption, which is a full freedom from what he did in his past. It doesn't mean there aren't consequences. I think if he's an honest person, he looks at his story, he probably would stay away from the Thanksgiving meal where the niece or nephew is going to be, because he did something to them that he should honor the fact that it could be really hard for them to be around him because of what he did. So he should stay away. I personally, my first book was called One Step to Freedom. When I see human beings, I know that every one of us are messed up. That's the human reality. No human problems scare me. Because when people are lost and confused about life, people do lost and confusing things. And so if we want, we can judge people and rain down punishment when they're messed up, or we can help them find out who they're made to be instead. And so consequences are necessary. I don't know if this answered your question or not. Consequences are
No, it
necessary.
is.
It helps people find redemption if they're willing to have appropriate remorse, regret, even repentance.
Consequences help people find
Yeah.
redemption
Yes.
if they're willing to find remorse. Now that's wow. That's actually a really really good answer. Because I know a lot of people, right? Especially women who have been hurt by men. They're like, man, how does this guy still get to play in the NFL? How does he still get to make millions of dollars, right? I'm sure that's how they would be they're feeling. That's how I would be feeling. How is this person that hurt me still get to do all these things after they hurt me? And what you're saying is there needs to be a consequence, but if that person is willing, then redemption has to be offered to them because none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
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 And I take that.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
So
There's
you go ahead.
yesterday I brought up a topic, or 2 days ago at the prison, I brought up a topic that was very sensitive. I was telling a story of someone else, actually my sister. And this story, part of her story is something that I knew would kind of, people use the word trigger, one of the inmates in the room. And as soon as I brought up that part of the story, he collected the things he had and he said, I have to go. And he walked out of the room. I'm okay that he walked out of the room, because he has a lot of hurt and a lot of anger over something that someone in his family did to him. I get that. But ultimately, if he wants to have freedom, if he wants redemption for his life, part of his redemption is going to be forgiving someone who hurt him instead of living with the anger and bitterness of what that person did to him. I think people do things. I think we all feel a sense of justice in holding on to an anger or resentment against someone. That person did this to me. I'm never going to let it go. And you know what? There are things that people do that I think there are people that would say, yeah, you should feel that way. Well, the reality is, if I choose to live in bitterness and anger and resentment over something someone did to me, I am choosing to let that event be the foundation of my life that I live upon. And so redemption is available to everyone, but sometimes the redemption that we need will happen when we allow someone else to receive redemption for what they did, even to us.
That's painful. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a vengeful guy. Um, so when people hurt me, hurt my family, it's really hard for me to let go. Like I really, really want to get back. And I find myself, you know, having negative thoughts about that person, wanting them to be hurt for
Mm.
whatever reason. Um, I've literally prayed that God, kill someone, um, who has hurt me, hurt my family. So it's hard, right, to hear somebody say everyone deserves redemption, even though it's very true. Um, but to put it into practice is probably one of the hardest things you can do as a human, like to free yourself of wanting someone to be redeemed after they've hurt you.
Yeah, I have sometimes in my mind I think about people on their deathbed. I think about a person. I was telling my brother one time because he was having an issue with someone who in his life was very impacting in a negative way. I just said, I told my brother, I was like, he's been a hurting man his whole life. And it's wrong the way he treated you, the way he talked to you. It was so wrong. But he is nothing but a hurt, broken man. He always has been. And someday his funeral is going to exist. And this person that that gripped your life because of the anger you had toward him, they're just going to be a corpse. What then? Are you then going to look at this corpse and say, because of what that person, how they treated me 17, 20 years ago, I was then bitter and lived with a chip on my shoulder for 20 years, and now they're a corpse. Was it worth it? What if that brother who was a jerk,
Oh,
that older brother that was a jerk and he was mean and rude and condescending, what if you took a little bit of a risk and just said something nice to him? You don't have to go move in with him. You don't have to go work with him, hang out with him. But what if you took a risk and you even sent a text message to say, "Hey, you know, our relationship has been kind of messy over the years. I just want to let you know you're my brother and I care about you."
that's
What
tough.
if that text message caused that broken, angry, confused brother to have an epiphany about life? What if he changed?
Do you most people don't really care, right? People walk around like I don't care. Like like the phrase "you're dead to me." Like maybe you don't want to see that person change. You don't care if they change. If they do change, good for them. But you don't really care about it. And maybe it's easier if it's a family member. But if if it's not a family member, it's just tough. So to tie it all into this, Pete Rose story, and to close that out, I agree with you. Right? We all mess up. We all deserve redemption. I just look at it from the other side of those who have been hurt, who wonder, why does this person who hurt me so bad deserve to be freed from that hurt while I essentially, in some instances, live with that hurt for a lifetime?
I would say redemption. I also like to use the word freedom because I think they're so connected. I think the question is, do you want to be a free human being or not? Because if people wrong you, you can legitimately think of reasons why they deserve your judgment, your anger,
Yep.
a lack of forgiveness. You can, and you can start adding up more things. You can accumulate reasons why they don't deserve. But what if the reason that you can't let someone else go? Imagine this picture. You're looking through prison bars at this person that metaphorically you want to keep them caged in a prison. They will never be forgiven. You'll never forget what they did. You'll never let go of what they did to you. And you're looking through that prison cell and you're kind of glad in your heart that they're in that
Yep.
prison cell of your mind, that you're not getting out of this ever. I'll never let go. I'll never forget what you did. What if at some point in your life you turn around and realize you're actually the one living in a prison cell? And those prison bars that you were looking through were not theirs, but your own prison.
Ooh.
I think that people who don't offer, this is a blanket statement. I think that people who do not offer redemption to other people are probably people who have not received redemption for themselves. Because if you've received redemption for yourself and you live with a sense of freedom, you become a conduit of freedom for other people. And so some people have been really hurt by people, and I'm not at all, I'm not trying to be non-sympathetic. My message to people who have been really hurt, like
Mm-hmm.
abused in awful ways, it's awful what has happened to people. My message to them is not get over it and just forgive people. That's not my message to them. My message to them is you can be set free from the ravaging effects of what happened to you. And you can rise up and be the person you are made to be in this world. That's the message of freedom and redemption that I want to proclaim to people.
Wow, I think it's so complex, and we might spend a whole conversation talking about this. So I'll push forward. Um, your book, One Step to
Hmm.
Freedom, um, and we were talking about it before we hit record here. Um, One of the main points in your book is stop trying to fix the
Ugh.
problem, and that to me counters a lot of mainstream talk, right? People tell you, if you're suffering, if you're not living the life that you want to, right? There's probably something there that you need to deal with. There's different types of therapists, spiritual healers, right? I mentioned to you that, I just recorded an episode with someone, who's a mental health therapist using Eastern practices to do so to help people heal their inner childhood. You're saying in your book, don't worry about that. Don't worry about fixing yourself, fixing the issue, and just like walk towards your purpose. I'd like to hear more about that, right? Your reasoning behind that line of thinking.
I don't know how much time we have, but I am I am so passionate about this. The back of the book, I had a friend of mine draw this picture. I got lots of pictures in this book. One Step to Freedom is in the back of it is this guy in a prison cell, and he's got this big box that represents his problem. It might be an addiction. This box might represent your past, and you're in the prison because of this problem. And oftentimes the reality is these prison bars are like invisible. So you have this big box that's your problem, and you try to get rid of it. And every time you try to get rid of it, it just hits those invisible bars. And you try this program, you read this book, you do this thing, you try this therapy, and you keep trying to, you can't get rid of the problem. And you try and you try and you try. And at some point you're like, well, you just kind of give up. And you just kind of see yourself as this person that I'm always going to be attached to this problem. This problem is who I am. My past is who I am. Freedom is when you leave the prison. Instead of getting the problem out of your prison, get yourself out of the prison. Because once you leave that prison cell, you can walk away from your problem instead of waking up every day trying to fix your problem.
But if you don't fix the problem, don't you risk walking out of the prison with the problem still?
I think
Like hanging around your ankle?
I think that the problem, listen, we will always have problems every day of our life. But the more that we try to fix ourselves, the bigger the problem gets. It's like, I think everyone loves the basic storyline of Superman, that here's this character who has superpowers and he goes around doing good for people. I think especially men, this is basically what every man is. Every man wants to be a guy that when he walks into the room, people respect him and he makes the room better. Everyone's like, oh, Mike's here. It's going to be a good day. Oh, Mike's here. If there's a problem, he can help. I think every man wants that. But there's this very fascinating component to the story of Superman that I think everyone knows, and that is that he has kryptonite. There is this substance that if he gets close to it, it destroys his superpowers.
His powers. Yep.
Now, when we watch Superman and we find that out, we don't leave the movie theater and say, this guy's he's a charlatan. He's no superhero. He has kryptonite. No, we don't do that. If anything, we just, inside of us, we cheer him away from his kryptonite. Come on, go put your cape on. Go do something good. We don't say, man, I can't believe Superman has kryptonite. He can't be Superman. But here's what we do in our real lives. Most people find out what our kryptonite is before we ever know what our calling is. And as soon as we find our kryptonite, we begin to focus on it. We're ashamed of it. We feel guilty. We disqualify ourselves. I have this problem. I can't even think about my future. I can't think about anything I can be in this world because I have this problem. We become so problem focused, we live a life with no power at all. And we morse, and the bigger our problem gets, what's everyone tell you? Hey, fix your problem. Oh, that's a big problem.
That's right.
You better fix it.
You got to deal with it. You got to deal with it first.
You got to deal with it. People say deal with it first. I'm telling you, that mindset that I have to fix my problem first is what creates the prison cell. I'm telling you, in my book I talk about this. The prison cell is not created by our problem. The prison cell is created by how we think about our problem. I have some kind of kryptonite. The mindset then is, oh, I have this problem. I can't go live my purpose. At that moment, the prison bars begin to pop up around my life because I'm telling myself every day, I can't live out my purpose. I cannot live out my purpose until I fix my problem. The reality is, you will have a problem that grows bigger and bigger and bigger until your purpose grows bigger and bigger and bigger. The bigger the problem, the bigger the purpose needs to be. Mike, I've studied this. Mike, think about this. We've all heard stories of people who have come from really bad backgrounds, and now they're doing something that's the opposite. And you hear their story, you hear their past. It's interesting. Let's say somebody used to be a drug dealer, and now they are doing something with their life to help homeless people. And they have a massive organization making lots of money to help homeless people. And everyone says, that's amazing. And it makes us turn to people who do drugs and says, hey, we tell them, hey, you should stop doing drugs so you can do something. That's the wrong storyline. The right storyline to talk to someone who's doing drugs is, hey, who are you made to be? You need to start chasing something 10 times bigger than your drug.
So you're this is hard to hear. It is, and I don't know.
Why is it hard to hear? Why is it hard to hear?
Because it feels like it's hard to put it into practice, at least from what we've been taught, right? It's like you first got to give up the drug habit. You first got to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. You first got to do this. You first got to do that, right? And then once you put those things behind, you walk into your purpose. So those chains, they have to come off first before you can reach your potential. Like if you're going to become super athletic, right? And you're super overweight, you first have to give up eating bad things, and so you can actually reach that goal, right? That's what we're taught in fitness. Like you're not gonna work yourself out to fitness if you're still eating those bad things. So if those bad things are what's holding you back, you first have to let those bad things go. You first have to let go of those chains that are around your ankles before you can walk into your purpose. That's what we've been taught. That's the sequence and order of things.
You're exactly right.
You're saying, hey, forget that, walk into your purpose. And it sounds like, and maybe I'm misinterpreting, you're saying walk into your purpose and those things will fall off as you're walking into your purpose.
Yes. As long as you're living in the prison cell of your problem, it's basically impossible to get away from your problem. I'll use my journey. I used to weigh close to 400 pounds. And I was the guy. This was me in the prison cell. Thinking to myself, I saw myself as nothing but an overweight, underachieving loser my whole life. That's all I saw myself as. And someday, if I get skinny, someday if I'll lose weight. And so how many nights do I go to bed full? I'm like uncomfortable laying in bed. I'm tired. My body is so full that it's uncomfortable. And I'm like, tomorrow I'm going to change. And by 9:30 in the morning, I'm looking for something to numb the pain of the frustration of my life. Listen, you're in that prison cell and you get so angry because outside of that prison cell, imagine my Superman cape is hanging on a wall. And every day it taunts me. That cape keeps telling me, Mark, if you will stop eating so much, if you will lose weight, you can get out of this prison, put this cape on, and make a difference with your life. But as long as you're inside of that prison cell, you're nothing but an overweight, underachieving loser of a man. And every day that you feel like an overweight, underachieving man, every day you feel like a drug addict, every day you say, all I am is an alcoholic, every day you say, these thoughts, you know who my cellmate was in my mind? A man who was a Little Debbie oatmeal pie dealer. And every time I get worked up and I'm so mad at myself for overeating. I'm so mad at myself for letting my calling hang on the wall outside of the prison cell. I'm so angry. I'm so frustrated. And my cellmate's like, hey, Mark, calm down. Here, one of these will help you. And he hands me a cream pie. We can deal with all this stuff tomorrow. You know what else my cellmate would hand me? A diet book. Here, Mark, here's a book on how to lose weight. That's your problem, Mark.
Ooh.
Yeah, diet book. Doesn't work.
Because you got a Little Debbie in your hand.
Well, not just that, but the diet book, you have no power to follow a diet plan when you're living in a prison of your problem. There's no power. Like, what's the point? If a person wakes up to be skinny, that will only make you hungry. But if a person wakes up free, then you can just go do stuff. Like, and the more that you do, the more that you live, like, we feel like we have to become skinny to put on our superhero cape. What we need to do is put that cape around our neck, and it doesn't matter if you weigh 380 or 280, doesn't matter what you weigh. Go do your purpose. At the same time, face your problem. Here's the if I could summarize the whole difference, it's this. People in the prison cell are there because they think they have to fix their problem before they live their purpose. Here's the twist. Instead, we can chase our purpose and focus on our purpose while we face our problem. So freedom can come before you're skinny. like every human being has fat on their body. Like, why do some human beings decide they're okay and other human beings decide they're not? Like, so freedom has to come first, not life change.
Wow. I think I agree with you. I think it's one of those things that's just hard to put into practice, though, especially the way we've been wired. As I'm having these conversations more and more, I feel like we've been wired and programmed all wrong, right? So the natural person, the natural thought will be, hey, you have this issue, solve it first, get back to me when you're ready to, live in your purpose, right? You can't go get the job you want. You can't go be an entrepreneur if you're back here dealing with, some long, I don't know, some belief that's holding you back, some addiction that's holding you back. And it's hard to now flip the script and say, no, go be somebody, go do that thing, go pursue that thing. And while you're doing that, face those
Yeah.
demons,
Yeah.
right? And in doing so, you will overcome them. So it's just totally different from what we've been taught.
Here's a kind of a simplistic kind of parallel. So I mentioned my grandson. He's 2, but let's say he's 4 years old, and he comes to my house, and there's cookies on the counter. And I tell Jace, I say, Jace, listen, you need to listen to me. This is really important. Cookies are terrible for you. They are full of this substance called sugar. It's the most addictive thing on planet Earth. And once you have it, you'll want it every day. And all these foods have sugar. And here's what it's going to do. Here's what it's going to do to your body. I could drill into Jace all of these dangers and warnings about sugar and how bad these cookies are for you. And I can say, Jace, now if you love me, you're not going to eat those cookies. We could have long conversations about it. So let's say every day there's cookies on the counter. And then one day, it's the afternoon, I look over and I see cookies missing from the plate. And I go find Jace. And he's got some crumbs on his shirt. And I say, Jace? And he immediately looks at me. And he's sheepish from the very first glance. He's kind of, Jace, anything you want to tell me? No, Grandpa. Are you sure? No, I'm just playing my trucks, Grandpa. Jace, come over here with me. And I make him take the walk of shame to the kitchen counter. And I take that plate and I put it in front of his nose. Jace, there's 3 cookies gone. Anything you want to say to me? And eventually he has to confess. I've cornered him, and he has to confess. And then I can say, Jace, I thought you loved me. Jace, how could you do this? I've told you how bad sugar is. I've told you how much sugar is in these cookies. And then I can tell Jace, I'm putting you in this program for all these other kids who have problems with cookies. And you're going to go there twice a week. And they're going to help you change. And then every time Jace comes to my house, when he comes in, I'm going to say, Jace, come here. Let me smell your breath. Hey, Jace, how are you doing with the cookie thing? Do you still want them? Or are you getting better at that? Let me tell you something. Jace won't want to come to my house anymore. Because I'm his cookie parole officer. We would never imagine doing that with a 4-year-old boy. But I think our culture does that to people all the time. And by the way, if I finish the story, let's say the day that he ate those cookies. Normally he eats lunch at 11, and then 11:30 to noon, someone takes him to the backyard to play and do his favorite games. But let's say the there was a remodeling project happening in the house. Everyone forgot. And no one gave him lunch, and no one played with him. And then he went and ate cookies on the counter. There are human beings living lives very unfulfilled. Metaphorically speaking, people are living malnourished lives. And then in their malnourishment, people turn to some kind of substance. And then we get shocked and say, I can't believe that you're doing that. Stop doing that. But we don't help anyone to find the nourishment or the substance of purpose they were made for. And there's almost no choice but to turn to cookies because there's no lunch.
Ooh.
But that's an example.
Wow.
You're right. I think that we are trained to think that if you have a problem, you need to go over on the sidelines and fix yourself.
Fix
and when
it.
You're
yeah.
fixed,
tie your shoelaces before you get back on the field.
And once you're fixed, then come back over here and we'll make sure that you're fixed. Then you come over here and now you can join the rest of the good people.
Right. Join the team.
Yeah. After you're fixed. But there's such a hypocrisy. Wow. I was talking to some men about this. And this one player, on his high school team, he was the star. He said, I could do no wrong. Like, he didn't even come out unless he said he wanted to come out. He could get injured on a play and the coach could go to start to bring someone in. He could wave off the coach. No, I'm staying. I'm good. Of course, the star player could miss half of his shots. He could turn the ball over. He could make defensive mistakes, but he is seen as the star. So all of his mistakes are quickly washed away, and we only push him on to go help us win. But someone else at the table, he had a very different story. He said, I was the sixth man, and I felt like I was a good player, but my coach, he'd put me in, and he would say, Ty, I'm going to put you in there, and I'm going to trust you until you prove me wrong. Wow. And if he makes a mistake, you're coming right off the court because you missed a shot. So a lot of people live their life afraid of missing a shot.
Wow. That's a nice segue into your practice, purpose therapy. And really, the conversation we started having was the purpose of my podcast really is, men love sports. I love sports. We talk about sports. And oftentimes sports is, whether it's at the gym or elsewhere, is what leads us down the path to more important conversations. Yeah. And, you talk about that, in your practice and the work that you do, why do men like sports so much? And it's because your takeaway is, men's identity is tied to sports. And you mentioned, off air that, men, you have conversations with men, not unlike, mental health therapists, except that you're not sitting in an office, right? Yeah. You're, having these conversations, fishing trips or whatever it is. So take us through that, right? Purpose therapy and all the work that you do, and also, understanding that why are we men so tied in love with sports, and so much of our identity, sometimes in a bad way, is tied up in sports.
Well, let me first of all tell a story from today, because yesterday I sent a text message to a couple of guys and invited them to play disc golf this morning. So a couple of us guys met at a park to play disc golf, and when we were there was this other group of people, and we knew a couple of those guys. We invited them to join us. So we ended up playing together a round of disc golf, 6 of us. And then afterward, 3 of us went to lunch. The other 2 ended up at the same restaurant. And the 5 of us men sat at a table together, ages like 55 down to like 21, sitting there talking about disc golf, giving each other pointers on how to throw a disc the right way. Sounds crazy. There's a lot to it. So we're talking about it. And And then I interjected and I said, you know what, guys? It's so easy for us guys to sit here and talk about how to throw a disc and admit when we fail at certain throws and talk about throws that we struggle with. It's totally normal. It's very easy, and we can get some very good help. You know what, guys? Here's what I said to them. Any problem that we have in our life, we should be able to talk about the same way with the dudes in our life.
Yikes.
There's nothing weird about any human problem. No one thinks it's weird if they...
Really?
Yeah, like people, no one thinks if I say, man, Mike, when I golf, I'm always slicing the ball when I golf. No one goes, wow, something's wrong with you. Like, no. You're like, dude, totally get it. Normal. Let me help you with that. Well, what if I could say to a friend, man, my kids right now, my daughter is 14. Here's how she talks to me. I don't know what to do about that. That's a conversation a man needs to be able to have with good dudes.
Agree, but that's tough, Mark. How do you, it's hard. We're not trusting even of our closest friends, right? We may not trust them enough to tell them certain things. So there are some things that I would say are weird to talk about. As much, listen, I have a podcast here to talk about sports and real stuff, have real conversations, but there are some things I'm wondering, will it get too uncomfortable to talk about? And even amongst friends, are some things just too private? You don't want to share too much of your wrongs. You want to put up a front, even to your closest friends and family, right? Your boys, you want to put up a front that everything is okay when maybe there's some obscure thing that really isn't okay and you're not comfortable sharing because it will make you look horrible.
My favorite part of the week is when on Thursdays I drive to a prison and hang out with about 12 inmates talking about purpose. Because in there's no hiding and everything is okay. There is no shocking revelations. You can say anything in that room and no one's going to go like,
well, is it because they're prisoners already, Mark? Like, hey, what can happen to me? I'm already here. I'm on death row. Why not?
You're kind of right. The problem with most people is they have to fake their life because they don't know how to be free in their life. Oh. People who are free don't need to be fake. The answer is not, my message to men is not, hey, go ahead and be uncomfortable with each other. That is not the point. The point is be free. You can be so free, like nothing's uncomfortable. Just be free with each other. When I go to that prison and I hang out with these inmates, I asked them a question about a month ago. I said, how many people do you know that live free? Talking about their whole life. Who have you ever known that you think lives free? I ask that question everywhere I go. The guys in the prison had the same answers that most people have. Mike, what do you think most people say to that question? Who do you know that lives? Nobody. That's what everyone says. Hardly anybody lives free. So we were talking about that. We were talking about, okay, how does someone live free? Here's what bothers me, Mike. If we as human beings sit in a room and we say, okay, who do you know that lives free? And we all say, well, nobody. Why don't we lock the door and decide we're not leaving this room until we figure out why we aren't living free, and we're not leaving until we do? Why do we just allow this one life that we have to live? Why do we allow ourselves to not live free? I think it's because we're more afraid of what people think of us than actually having freedom.
Yes.
I heard a story of a guy who was an eye doctor. He was a very well-respected eye doctor. He was also very well-respected in his community. He was on the boards of several things. Like, everyone knew this man. He had some kind of surgery, and he was given pain pills after the surgery. And he liked them a lot. So much so that he began to write his own prescription, which is very much against the law. And he
Right.
developed a addiction that lasted for a number of years. And it all came to a head. He became suicidal, he said. But here's something he said about a story. He said, I was actually more afraid of people finding out than I was afraid of suicide. We are horrified. We are horrified as human beings of what people might think of us, and will they judge us? Mm-hmm. So we're in that prison. I want to tell you this. So I'm in that prison, and we're talking about why aren't people free? This inmate, his name is Toulouse. He stood up. He's my age. He stood up, and he spoke like a king with great conviction, and like he was so serious. He said these words like he's on his deathbed, and you must know this. But here's what he said. You will never live the life that you were made for until you face yourself. And he's 1,000% right. This is the step that most human beings will never take, is to face oneself. Because we're afraid of what we will find, and we're afraid of how people will respond. But the reason I am always proclaiming freedom to people is because if people will face themselves, what they will find is their gift. That's what they will find.
What are we so scared of, in your opinion? What makes us so afraid? Like, I know you say, we're scared of being found out. Like, why is that, though?
Part of it, I think you can only be Superman if people want you to be Superman. The gift that we have for people is somewhat held hostage by people who say, well, I don't want your gift. Or your gift in the world can explode because people say, we do want your gift. I think to a degree, we always talk about, you shouldn't fear people, but to a degree, people can have a real impact on your life based on how they treat you.
Yep.
And so if I have a gift, if someone says, I see your gift, I want to use your gift, well, that changes my life. But if I say and think about you, oh, you don't have anything to offer, I don't need anything from you, well, your gift is held hostage. And so we do have a great impact on each other as people.
So other people, seems like other people possibly are limiting our gifts or the use of our gifts.
Without a doubt.
Wow.
There's no doubt that absolutely happens. It's not just.
So what do we do? Do we just leave those people behind? Because that could be discouraging,
yep.
Right? Somebody says, I don't care for your gift, right? That's, discouraging. That hurts. That, that's a no. Right? People don't like to be rejected. So then it's like, now you got to put your cape on for somebody else.
Yep. Yeah, I, as much as I can, get around the people who are very interested in keeping my cape on. Those are the people. You know what's interesting? I used to hate.
Stay away from haters.
I used to hate accountability. I thought it was dumb. I never thought that someone could get me to stop eating too much. But now I love accountability. But here's the difference: we usually see accountability as someone who helps you stop your problem. Now I see accountability as someone who helps you live out your purpose. Because me living out my purpose is exactly what empowers me to overcome my problem. Accountability are people who keep my cape on. I'm sitting here right at this desk right here where I wrote this book, One Step to Freedom. And I tell you, I go to write, and it took me 4 years to write this book. There was no AI involved in it. It was me and I. That was it. Because I was living this material, I was writing this material, and sometimes I would sit at this computer, and my fingers would hit the keyboard, and I'd be like, does anybody care? Is this going to help anybody? Does this matter? Like just normal human doubt. And there were times I wore out a path between me and the kitchen because it was easier to go eat crackers than to face the next steps for me to take. You know what accountability is? It's my friend Kellen, who I would call him and I would say, Kellen, I'm trying to write my book. I need to finish this. But right now I have more doubt than I have faith, and I'm going to the kitchen to eat crackers. You know what he said? Mark, that's dumb. At least get a good snack. Go get some pie. You know what? Here's what was powerful about that. He wasn't really telling me to eat pie. He was laughing at my kryptonite. He could have said, Mark, you need to work on that cracker thing. No.
Put down those crackers.
He laughed at my kryptonite and just encouraged me to go write the book. And I could text him a month later. I'm sure I did. I would text him. I would just say these words. Hey, Kellen, would you tell me again? Accountability is people that you can totally share your problems with, and their response is, Mark, where's your cape? That's accountability.
Dang.
They don't say...
A lot of us don't have that, Mark. A lot of us don't have that.
I know it. I know it. I know it.
So what do we do?
I tell you, you're going to... Here's what I did. In my life, I decided that I reached a time in my life, I was 47 years old, and I felt like I was living for nothing but the next item of food I would eat. I was living for comfort and security. And inside of me was like a 1-inch tall lion in the bottom of my heart, wondering if it would ever need to roar. And I was 47, and I was reading a book, and I read the first line, and the first line said, stop living as if the goal of life is to arrive at death safely. And I read it again, and my wife was next to me, I handed her the book, I said, read that first line.
What book is that?
It's called Chase the Lion by Mark Batterson. Chase the Lion. So here,
man, I read a Mark Batterson book. I don't think it's Chase the Lion though, but I because that quote sparked something. I remember that quote. People, we're living as if we're just trying to arrive at death safely make it to death, to our funeral. So, I remember that line. That's why I was wondering what the title of that book was. Okay,
is I had to go first as a man and be honest about me. I decided to unveil myself and stop hiding and stop pretending. And what I found was the people who wanted freedom started getting close to me. And I just invited them in. And more and more and more, like I just keep finding people, or people keep finding me that want freedom. And we just keep taking steps together. There's a man, good friend of mine. I never met him until I became kind of free as a man. And
Mm-hmm.
we developed an instant friendship because people who live free become quick friends because it's a whole different language. When you're not faking it, you're real. Like it's a whole different language. So we got to know each other pretty quickly. And I recall one day we were in a conversation, probably just a number of months into our friendship. And then our phone conversation, just kind of a good dude talk, he interjected one sentence about he and his wife that was really personal. You could say one of those comments that's like, oh, I can't say this as a man. Well, he did. And I chose in that moment to not even respond, just stay in the dude conversation we were in. Because I didn't want him to even think I would flinch for a second at what he said. 2 days later, he called me. And here's what he said. I just wanted to know if we were still okay. I said, what do you mean? He said, the other day on the phone, I said something to you. And I wanted to know if we were still okay. And I said to him, I said, you're a great man. And nothing that you could ever tell me will change what I believe about you. Ever. You're a great man. To have friends in my life that I can be 100% Clark Kent with, and I can tell them my fears, my struggles. I can tell them anything, and they just look at me and say, "Well, let me go get your cape because I think you need to put it back on."
Dang. That's powerful.
That is the kind of accountability and friendship. A man can do almost anything with that kind of friendship.
Wow.
But it's really
like
hard to be Superman without those people in your life. I honestly don't know if a man can be Superman without those kind of people in his life. I think we would be an egomaniac. I think we'd be out of control. I think we would be one of those evil heroes. You know, I'm not thinking of the names right now. The Joker. We'd be the Joker. Trying to be powerful without people in our life. I'm just so thankful as a man. I was talking to a group of men a year ago, and they all see me as a leader of men. And I said, you guys need to understand something. I am not a strong man. I just keep hanging out with strong men like you guys. And I just think if a man who wants to make a difference in this world, instead of sticking his chest out, he needs to stick his heart out and be honest and real. And when he does,
That's tough.
and when he does that, the men who get it, the men who want that kind of life, they'll start walking closer to him.
That's tough. We're taught to take things to the grave, Mark. We're taught not to share certain things, not to share secrets, to put on a facade. That's the society we live in. That's the world we live in. There is nothing about this world that tells us we will be okay if we share our deepest secrets, if we share our limiting beliefs with other people, because what we believe is that as soon as we share something, we're going to get it stomped on, right? So it's great to find a group of men who you can do that with, but what we believe and what we've been taught is that group doesn't really exist, right? Or it's hard to find, and therefore, as soon as you think you find somebody, and people will say this, right? They get in a relationship, they think this person can be trusted, and then sooner or later they find out that person can't be trusted. That person is telling everybody about their business, right? Friendships, different relationships, men and women, whatever it is, right? So all of the stories we hear is people revealing themselves, and then it gets stomped on somehow. It gets found out, and, oh, man, I trusted this person, and they let me down. So there is really literally nothing in this world that will lead us to believe that the relationships that you speak of actually exists. So I would forgive my audience if they're like, I don't know about this one, Mark.
Well, you can tell your audience that they can email me. If they don't have a person in the world that they can have that kind of relationship with, they can have it with me.
Oh,
Because I have never met a human being that is worse than me. I go to that prison once a week. I'm just one of those men.
man.
I am them and they are me. I sit across from men every week. Probably every week I meet a new man. Usually they come to me because they're really down and out in life.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, what crushes me is I sit across the table from men who have been struggling. Like last week I met a guy. He said, for 25 years I've been angry, depressed, and suicidal. And he described his life. This man is a better man than me. There's qualities about him that I can't even get near. There's a big difference, though. As a man, when I unveiled myself and was real, people loved me. When people found out about his kryptonite years ago, they judged him, and they never stopped.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The only difference between him and I is people allowed me to receive redemption through their forgiveness and their grace. And that man across the table, for 25 years, all he's received is judgment instead. It's very humbling to sit across from that man. I would, Mike, I want to say to you what I would say to any one of your listeners. And so, Mike, you're the only one I can talk to. I want to say this to you. I want to tell you, Mike, what's wrong with you. And if you don't mind, I will say this publicly to everyone who hears this. But it's up to you. You don't have to. If you want, you can protect yourself. But I would like to tell you what's wrong with you.
What's
You
that?
want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Mike, nothing is wrong with you. You're a man. You're a human. Your whole life you've had good intentions. You've done good things. You've also had just humanity. You've been surrounded by humanity your whole life. And there's times that you've messed up, just like everyone else. Pete Rose and me, all of us. You've messed up. You've had some bad days. You've had a bunch of great days. You've done some great things that no one gave you credit for. You made some mistakes. People have done wrong things to you. Why? People have done wrong things to all of us. You're a man living in a kind of a messed up world, just like the rest of us. But Mike, there's nothing wrong with you. The fact that messed up things happen don't mean that you're a messed up man.
Do you feel like there's bad people?
I do. But I think they get bad after they're broken. And sometimes they're broken before they're even potty trained. And that's devastating. I mentioned this earlier. There are people who find their kryptonite before they ever knew there was a calling for them to live with. And so some people never know anything but kryptonite, and they never knew there was another option.
They never knew they could be Superman.
Never
Wow.
knew.
Wow. Um, so pivoting or pushing forward with the conversation, purpose therapy, your mastermind, 8 conversations that you have. Can we touch on that
Yeah,
for a bit? Because I know we started talking about it offline. 8 conversations that men should be having.
yeah.
What
So
are
the Purpose
those?
Mastermind, it's for men and women. It's also, we do this with teenagers. The premise is that the most foundational thing about a person's existence is you should know your purpose. It, it is it's so simplistic, but knowing your purpose is foundational to everything. And so we start in the beginning of the mastermind, we start with the premise that you're living in a wilderness. And imagine being in a wilderness where you can't even see 3 feet in front of you because the bushes and the trees are so thick. Well, if there's no path in the wilderness and every step you have to like put your hands in the bushes and move them to take one step, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have the same scenery again, it is so exhausting. What we want for people is to have the sense that they're living on a dirt path in the wilderness, moving toward their purpose every day. We believe people can do this. So it's a very simple thought, but if you're in the wilderness, like, how do you find a path? Because you can't see anything. So we walk people through the first 3 conversations. We talk about common confusing ways of thinking that keep us in the bushes. And until we think different, we're going to stay in the bushes. So one of them is the mindset that my job is my purpose. Many people think their job is their purpose. And
Mm.
this mindset keeps us lost as a person. That's one of the 8 conversations. And then we talk about what you can think instead. Another one of the conversations is when it comes to purpose, people think, well, my purpose has got to be one specific thing. And I have to find out what that one specific thing is. And so we have a conversation.
It's not. So it's not?
Oh, no. Are you? No. No.
Okay. So when people say you were put on this, find out what you were put on this earth to do, what that one thing is, you're like, no, it's not.
Oh, one specific thing. No.
You're going counter against everything that we've been
Well,
taught here.
look around at our
Oh my
culture
God.
and how is our common working out?
Well,
It's
not
not
good.
working out good at all. We make life so complex that we constipate our lives.
Oh
Completely
God.
constipate it. Um, Purpose is who you are, not this one thing you do. It's who you are. It's how you show up all the time. It's who you be. It's how you look at the world. I love Fred Rogers, if you recall, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He once said
Mm-hmm.
this: life, he said, it's simple but deep. Simple but deep. He said, but culture offers us the complex and the shallow. How many people spend years and years and years trying to figure out their one specific thing? How can you ever know it?
That's what we're taught to do.
We are taught to do that. And it was the wrong question from the beginning. Purpose is who I be. It's not this dot that I find. It's who I be. And I can be that
Wow.
wherever I go. People, the more desperate that people search to figure out their one thing, they will commonly do no thing because they're searching. They're 30 and they're searching. They're 35 and they're searching.
Yes.
They're 40 and they're searching.
Yes. What was I put here for? That's what we're taught. What was I put here
Yep.
to do?
Mark Twain, with Mark Twain's famous quote: "The two most important days of your life. First, the day you were born. The second, the day you realize
You find out
why."
why?
So
Yeah,
listen to this.
yeah.
So I love having conversations about purpose. I will do it the rest of my life. I was at a friend's house and I was having lunch with their 5-year-old and their 3-year-old. And I was like, well, might as well teach them about purpose now. And so Richard is 5, Reagan is 3, and we're eating lunch. I was eating lunch. They were making animals out of their sandwiches or something. I'm not sure. Trust me, I was eating. But I
Mm-hmm.
picked up a plate and I said, "What's this for?" Little Richard said, "For holding your food." And he held up a napkin. I said, "What's this for?" Little Reagan said, "It's for wiping your face." I held up a fork. "What's this for?" And Richard said, "It's for stabbing your food." And then I looked at Richard, 5 years old. I said, "What are you for?" He said, "I'm for God." I said, "What's he want you to do?" He said, "Love people."
Dang.
What if, what if little Richard becomes a person who is so moved by the impact he can have with people that he simply finds ways his whole life to make a positive impact on the lives of people because he loves people? What might he do? There's all kinds of options of what he can do. But I'll tell you one thing: when people spend their life searching to figure out the one thing, they oftentimes end up doing nothing. And that's what I want to stop. I want people to be set free, to be able to look in the mirror and simply know their purpose in one sentence and go start doing it every day. Stop wondering if they're missing it. Stop wondering if they're at
Yeah.
the right place. Stop wondering if they married the right person. Stop wondering if they work the right job. Stop wondering if they're living in the right house. Instead of asking all of these questions that leave us piled up with guilt, instead, put on our purpose glasses and be like, I'm going to go be this today. Everywhere I go, I'm just going to go be this person. And
Be what? That's the question I would ask. Be what? If you don't know what you're supposed to
mhm.
be, then you say, "Hey, go be that person." Then I'm going to ask, "What am I going to be? Am I just going to be wandering around in the wilderness, in the forest?"
Good question. Well, look, so there's some, I'm trying to give an example. Let me give an example from the prison, because last week we were kind of at the end of the Purpose Mastermind, and I said, all right, guys, who knows your purpose? And I looked at Anthony. Anthony is a great dude, just a great dude. He said real calmly and confidently, he said, I know my purpose. I said, what's that? He said, I'm a builder. And he said, you can take that in all kinds of ways. And another inmate spoke up and said, well, you can't do that here. We're in this prison. You can't do that here. He said, oh, no, I do it all the time. He said, I build people. I build relationships. I build bridges between people. I'm building up my thinking. He listed 4 or 5 or 6 things that he does every day as a builder. So if he gets out of prison, and I think he is in a year or so, he can look at every day he can look at the world as being a builder. So if he gets a job, I'm going to help build this company. Now, if he does a good job trying to build that company that he's been employed at, chances are he's going to learn a lot. He's going to grow as a person. Doors are going to open. He might get promoted to a higher position. He might learn enough about business that he's like, you know what? I'm going to go build my own business. Well, what kind of business am I supposed to build? Wrong question. Build whatever kind of business you want to build. What do you? Why do we need to ask What kind of business am I supposed to build? If you want to build a business, use your wisdom, use the love and care that you have for people, and look around and say, you know what? I think I could help people with this kind of business. I have these kind of skills. People need this kind of service. I'm going to build a business that where I can use my skills for something that people need. Instead of thinking, is this what I'm supposed to do? You can just boldly just go give it a shot. If it doesn't work, just like a river, you can turn with the current and try something different, and you can adjust.
I think I figured it out, Mark. And everything, I know we have a few more conversations, but in everything that we've talked about so far, the bottom line is that we need to stop living in the box, whether it's a box that we've created for ourselves or a society and other people have created for us. We need to stop living in that box of asking why and asking questions, can I, and just stepping out of there and doing it.
Yeah.
Because in that sense is when we achieve our purpose and we live the life that we're supposed to live. But more often than not, we're stuck asking questions are other people going to have other people forgiven me? Does somebody else know about my past?
Am I skinny
Do I
enough
need to
yet?
ask somebody for am I skinny enough? Do I need to ask for the game plan or what type of house am I supposed to build? Like all these things are questions. It seems like that whether it's we ask of ourselves or we think other people are going to ask of us, that really keep us from fulfilling our purpose. I think that's where you're going. And all of this, putting it all together, is where you're going. To stop asking questions, stop trying to get answers, to just do it. Just do it, Nike.
Yes.
Just do it.
In that box are all the wrong questions. But as long as you're in that box, they sound right. So we can go down that road. In the mastermind, we have this picture in the booklet of a person inside of a room with 100 doors. And outside of that room is their future. And they're trying to figure out which door they're supposed to go through. And it's perfect what you said. The box. Inside of that room, we think the door we choose is the most important thing we do. And so you go to every door. Check this out. On every door, Mike, is a touch screen. If you touch it, there's 100 interviews on every door with people giving you advice about whether or not you should walk through that door. That's wonderful, right? All this advice for me. The problem is 50 of those people say, Mike, if you go through this door, like it's not going to work. It's going to blow up in your face. You're going to be in debt. It's going to be bad. The other 50 people say, Mike, you should go through this door. It's really going to work. 100 interviews on 100 doors. And you study, and you study, and you study. And it feels like the room is telling us that the most important thing is the door that you choose. The truth is, the door doesn't make the man makes the door. In other words, the door you go through, on the other side of that door, whatever's over there is not going to take over your life and decide your future. What's going to determine your future is the man that you are when you walk through that door. Inside of that room, the most important question is, which door should I choose? Oh my goodness. I have a 1 in 100 chance of getting it right. Wrong. The most important thing in that room is the man that I am when I walk through the door.
Wow.
We could whittle it down to one wall with 25 doors. See the 25 doors? And we could spend 2 more years studying those 25 doors and then decide, all right, it's this door right here.
Yeah.
And imagine opening up that door. This is the one. I know it. This is the one. I can feel it. Now, if you wait till tomorrow, a different door will feel like it's the one. Let's say you finally get the courage to go through a door. You go through it and you close it. And you're like, oh, I did it. And you turn around and you see 25 doors that all went to the same room.
To the same outside.
And you wonder, why did I just spend 7 years studying 25 doors that went to the same room? We complicate our life to the point we don't know what to do with it. And the more we study it, the more we study it. And the more we study it, the more we study it.
Wow. Let's keep going. 8 conversations. Where did we leave off? Number 4?
The fourth conversation is this right here. I wrote a book about it because it's maybe our most important conversation. You've got to live with a sense of freedom. And to do that, you have to know what to do with your story. Many people have never figured out what to do with their story because everyone has one. Everyone has a story. And our story, just like a movie, has some scary parts. Just like a movie, there's some parts where the good guy was the bad guy, doing the wrong thing. All of our stories, I'm convinced that every human being has a reason to be afraid of their story. And most people live their whole life afraid of their story. And we need the freedom that only redemption can bring. And that's the fourth conversation, is finding freedom. Really not just freedom from our story, but freedom for our story. Because everyone we know, it seems like everyone's looking at us to judge us. The truth is, everyone's looking at us, waiting for our life to show them redemption so they can do the same. I'll finish with it.
Is that so?
Oh, yes. But you won't see it until you put yourself out there.
It feels like people are waiting for us to mess up, Mark. They're waiting for us to fail.
Isn't it awful?
They're haters. At least that's what we've been taught. People feel like they have all these haters. They're waiting for us to fail.
There are people like that, for sure. There are people like that. But there are so many people, like, in their hiding places, in their fakeness, they're looking for someone to show the way. My whole life, Mike, I could never be honest about my story. Nobody could know the real me. I faked it well. I was a good man, but I was a good man inside of a prison that I had created with my life. I finally became real about me. And when I became real, it set me free. I used to spend, this metaphor of a prison is so real to me because it's how I felt like I lived my life. In that prison cell, there was cabinets of cookies, and my cellmate was a dealer of cake and pie, and there were stacks of diet books, and just had nothing but guilt and shame of who I was as a man. And I just felt like I was supposed to be a man who mattered. Not in an egotistical way. I think all of us matter. Of course we do. All of us matter, but I had given up on being a man who mattered because I was a man who had messed up too much. And I'm in that prison cell. And when I was finally honest about me, it got me to think very different about life. instead of thinking about why am I not skinny yet, I began to think about who was I made to be. I began to face myself, and I remember this moment in my life where metaphorically I was doing some boxing lessons at the time, because when I started focusing on my purpose, I started focusing on my problems. I'm doing these boxing workouts. I probably weighed 350 pounds, and I'm doing these boxing lessons, and it wasn't pretty, but it was powerful. Didn't have to be pretty. I was glad to face the mess of me because I was focused on the purpose of me. But Mike, this moment was so real in my life. I'm sitting in this prison cell, and it's like my whole life I've been a faith-based guy. And I felt like my whole life I was a disappointment to God. Because I felt like God had something for me to do in this world. But I felt like I was eating it away. And I just, in my prison cell, I felt like I'm always looking down on my prison cell, just looking at plates of food and eating. And I felt like Jesus was always at the door, looking at me and my problem, ashamed of me. In my mind, that's how I always thought. That God is disappointed in me. Everything that I've been given in life, and
Something else we're
and
taught.
all I'm doing is eating it away. What a disgraceful person. When I became honest about me with people, in my mind, I looked up, and this was not a vision I had. It's just like my heart was just feeling this reality. It's like in my mind, I finally looked to Jesus outside the prison cell. I was so afraid he was going to be scowling at me, looking at my problem. In my mind, I looked up, and Jesus was looking at me, not my problem. He wasn't looking at disgust at my stomach. In my mind, in my heart, Jesus just said, the door's not locked. And I went to the prison cell door, and my boxing gloves in my mind, I just gently pushed on it. The door just creaked open. And I took a step out and looked both ways, and there was no one to push me back in. And I started running. And I'm still running today. And I'm not a skinny man yet, but I'm free. I am a free man. And every day I focus on my purpose, and I face the weakness of my humanity every day. But I'm not ashamed to face my weakness. I'm not ashamed if I walk by the donuts and want one. I'm not even ashamed if every now and then I get one. I focus on my purpose, and I honestly face my weakness. But Mike, here's what I think. People that are willing to do the gutsy thing of coming out of hiding and be real about their life and chase their purpose, they will help other people do the same. In my life, a conversation I had with a man, one of the first honest conversations I ever had with a man. I called a man and I said, I feel like I'm killing myself with food. And I was just honest about me with that man. And I said, Alan, I feel like I'm going to die a young man. And my funeral was going to be a whole bunch of people. And they're all going to be thinking, Mark was a good guy. If he would have stopped eating so much food, he would have done something with his life. I said, Alan, in the front row are my 3 kids. And my life will have never shown them what freedom looks like. Now I know this as a man. My life has shown my kids what freedom looks like. And I could tell you multiple stories of people whose lives have changed simply because I became real and began to honestly face myself while boldly facing and chasing my purpose. There's many stories I could tell you, but I just want to, as we finish, I want to say to anybody, if you'll face yourself in any of the junk of your life, if you'll face it, not fix it, just face it, you'll probably find your gift. And the reality is, every single one of us, our life is a gift. There is no doubt about that. And the world needs us.
Wow. That's nothing else to say there. Listen, we could go on for several hours more. I just want to listen to this. This is wisdom. Where can people find you, Mark?
I have a podcast called the Purpose Mastermind Podcast. That's the name of our program that we do with people. It's just, this is the program, the Purpose Mastermind. And you can also go to my website, markdelaney.com. We also have a nonprofit side. The website is purposemastermind.com. So that's how people can find out more about us.
Excellent, excellent. I think I mentioned this to you on my website. I'm putting together resources, experts, right, for people to get in contact with, whether it's business related or your program, people finding their purpose. So I'm gonna have Mark on there. All right. So you guys, after you watch this episode, if you want to reach out to Mark, he'll be on there on the website as well, in a link to his website. I appreciate you, Mark, for the time spent. I know we could go on longer. I'd love to have you back on to talk more. I mean, your time in prisons, I think that in and of itself it's its own conversation about how we treat prisoners. Yep. Talk about people needing redemption. But yeah, this was a great conversation, man. I really appreciate it.
I've enjoyed this a lot. I would rather you come to Oklahoma so we can have a conversation while playing disc golf.
I've never played.
I could show you. It's a lot of fun.
Oh man, I see people all the time playing disc golf, and I've never played disc golf. No, that's interesting. No, good stuff. You guys, appreciate you listening. Hour 40 minutes. I think it was worth it. I hope you found it to be worth it as well. Finding your purpose. I think both of us, or all of us, are on that journey. But Mark is telling us we already have what we need. Just walk out of that jail, walk out of that box, and walk towards it. So appreciate you guys for listening and hanging out. I'm gonna catch you guys next time on Sports and the Real Mike with Mark Delaney. You guys be good.
I'm going straight to the top. Just put the stack on the clock. I am Ray Allen's a shot. I'm going straight to the top.